All right, good afternoon. Welcome in. Good morning, depending on where you may be, to another edition of the Awesemo Fantasy Football Show. Of course, on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, where we have you covered all season, no matter what the move is, streaming right down to starter sit, which will start for you finally, week 1 edition. It's here. All of the preseason crap that we had to wade through. Lofty's in the house. Rasa's in the house at Lofty_D, at Jazz Raz DFS, at Shander Show for me. And gentlemen, I know we've got a bunch of different names we'll throw out today. Friday will be more of a interactive show like we had last week, except instead of drafts, it will be full-on starter sits. We're going to get the ball rolling today and look and, of course, incorporate Thursday night as best we can. But we've been talking about this moment. We've been talking about getting to this moment. Finally, we could put all the drafts and all the preseason shit rear view mirror, full speed ahead now, week 1.
I can't wait. This is it. Like, we're here. We are at week 1, and
right.
Life's about to get really, really busy in the coming weeks. There's no doubt about that. But listen, would I rather be doing anything else? Of course not. Ben knows. Eytan, you don't complain about a job where it's like, oh my God, I get so many hours this week, but I'm talking football. Now, I'm stoked to be talking starter sit or stardom sit, and we're going to do 1v1s too. Ben came up with a great idea for Friday's show. Send in your 1v1s. If you've got those tough decisions to make, bad matchups, great matchups, maybe on a lesser player, and you don't know what to do, we'll hit that on Friday heading into week 1 as well. But I'm happy to be here, man.
No doubt. And I feel like I have a little jump. I'm not in midseason form, but I've been in the college football streets. Yep. So I've got a couple of weeks of football under my belt. We were sweating it out Saturday, all good things. And now we get to turn the page. That was kind of the appetizer for the main course. How could you not be excited just as a football fan in general?
Until like 2 o'clock on Sunday, and then everything's destroyed.
That is a generous time slot. 2 o'clock. That's like week 8 for me. Like 109. It's just like, did you have him? Like, nah.
The Eric Ebron 3 touchdowns in the first half game to me will just always be a stain, because I had great teams across the board. But if you didn't have Eric Ebron, you're just absolutely DFS, obviously. But season long, it's a little bit different. You just have to dodge one team.
No, that's the beauty of it, is that we'll definitely cover it from all angles here from the season-long strategy point. And dive in already, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed. All 3 channels, of course, not just the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, but our main Awesemo channel, as well as the Awesemo Odds channel. Ben referenced what's going on in college, betting you, give him a nice pub there. He and Matt already on fire 2 weeks into the season, including week 0 here. But for us, let's look at it. Oh, of course, Underdog, too, by the show here. Make sure you use our promo code Awesemo at Underdog. Still, as you're getting in your best ball drafts, this is the spot. Over $3 million in prizes, and the big one, including over $1 million to first place. The puppies lined up as well. Just jump in and use our promo code Awesemo for a match. It's fantastic. And again, the only and best place to be for your best ball drafts. All right, so Thursday night is in play here. We'll dive as much as we can, really deep with fan interaction, of course, chat interaction on Friday, as you mentioned, Lofty. But let's start at the quarterback position, and wherever you want, as far as who you are going to, what the gut says to start for Thursday, for Sunday, across the board.
For sure. And I'm going to do my best not to give you guys that you're starting no matter what, even if they're in bad matchups, because generally speaking, to start them. But one guy that you were drafting as like the QB5 is Dak Prescott. And you look, and I think I've already had questions about him coming into week 1. The reason I want to talk about why you should be starting Dak Prescott is pretty simple. First of all, everyone, the only thing anybody was remembering about the Bucs, outside of having a good offense and 3 legitimate weapons at tight or wide receiver, Rob Gronkowski at tight end, is the fact that their defense was dominant in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, making Patrick Mahomes and company look like they haven't played football before. I think Tampa Bay's defense is good. No question, right? They have a very good defense, much improved from even a couple seasons ago. However, this could be a game that either A, shoots out, or B, Tampa goes up early, and Dak Prescott, as we saw almost every game last year before he got hurt against the Giants, forced to throw from behind and was on pace to shatter the single season passing yards record. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see the same volume from him this year, but I do think this could be one of those games with them being 7.5-point dogs on the road Tampa Bay has the highest implied total on the slate, 52 over under in this game to kick off the season on Thursday night. Dak Prescott either is going to need to throw because Tampa Bay's run defense isn't just good. They are fantastic. Like, you want to exploit them, you're going to have to throw the football. And if that's the case, Tampa Bay goes up early. I do think Dallas's defense will be a bit better. They reshaped their linebacking core, but the corners are still going to struggle. I still anticipate Tampa Bay putting up points early. And if they do, the great thing is either Dallas is going to keep pace and Dak's going to throw, or they're going to have to catch up and Dak is going to throw. This is the exact type of game script you look for in daily fantasy football. Apply the exact same thing here in the season-long world.
No doubt about it. I mean, we saw this early with the Cowboys last year. I don't think it'll be as drastic where they were just racking up. They were in full, catch-up mode from the beginning of these games, but look at the spread. And you just got to look. I know there's a lot of concern and they're on Hard Knocks and Dak doesn't seem right. We're going to find out, but I think until you really see it come to fruition, a lot of that's probably smoke and mirrors. Got to roll him out there. It's a fine spot. Should be a competitive game, even though, the spread, Tampa's just really, really good. I think that spread is more talking about their offense than the Cowboys not being able to move the ball, particularly through the air. As you said, I'm more worried about Zeke than Dak in that matchup.
That's a good call. You're still starting Zeke.
Yeah, you have to, but it's not the best spot. That's for sure.
Here's the thing, though. Are we not overlooking a pretty key element, which is right now 1, if not 2/5 of the offensive line, most likely out? We know Martin is out. Collins looks like he's GTD, if not out. That's a lot to factor in because the game plan doesn't change, but the execution might. Like, you still may have Dak drop back if you're down 20 points in the second half, but you may not be able to get those passes off as much. And we may just see Tampa Bay be able to suffocate this line mainly because of who's out. And that could be a determining factor of what you expect versus what you get back.
Entirely possible. It's a good point. The Tampa Bay defensive line and pass rush, they're going to do everything they can, and they're very good getting to Dak. But what I'm saying here is you're not going to be able to do it on the ground in this game. I don't think you can. So essentially, you go back to the age-old adage that volume in fantasy football is king. And I think the volume, regardless of whether Dak has a lot of time to throw or not, you'd be more worried about his shoulder getting hurt than anything else. But for me, you're going to have to throw the football. I just don't see any two ways around it. So you're going to have to figure ways to get the ball out. And the good thing about this is they have guys in this offense with a big catch radius that can get open. You got someone like CeeDee Lamb that can operate out of the slot, give you quick outs. We saw Ben Roethlisberger do it a ton last year. No one held onto the ball less time in the pocket than Roethlisberger last year because the offensive line couldn't protect him. So you would think that coming into week 1, they will be ready for this. They'll try and get guys open quickly. And if you can move the ball that way with all of the weapons they have on this team, I think they're still going to put a lot of points up. And look, Roethlisberger and company, despite how bad that line was last year, they still managed to do it. And they still had to throw the football a ton. If you give me the volume, I think the rest will fall into place.
The last thing I'll say real quick, there's really no downside when you have volume. Cause I'm going to bring it to college for a second. In college, when you get sacked, you lose those rushing yards. Like Dak, he could have a couple turnovers. He could take some sacks. Those are not going to kill your output. It actually, in some ways, might force his hand volume wise. So I don't know if it'll be the most efficient game. And I do think there's scenarios where the Cowboys don't look great, but I find it hard to believe that at worst, you're just not getting a massive volume. And if you get that, you kind of have to just live with the result.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, who are you rolling with? Who's your start?
Yeah, so a couple of my guys, as we go through this are going to be somewhat obvious. I think this guy's kind of on the cusp. It's just banking on all the offseason storylines with Aaron Rodgers, and he doesn't draw the easiest matchup in the world going into the Dome to take on the Saints, but I just really think people are forgetting how insanely good he was last year. And when you look at this team, they're going to be just fine. I think Green Bay is going to operate at a pretty high level. Totals of 50 in the game. Packers are 4.5-point favorite on the road. As far as I know, Devontae Adams is all good to go. He's going to be there just dominating as usual. And I think we're going to still see Rodgers in the best MVP version of himself. So I'm keeping it pretty simple there. That was a guy that we talked about when we were reviewing teams last week. He is in our league, my quarterback. I feel very comfortable, even in a tough matchup. The Saints, they were top 10 in passing yards allowed per attempt last year, but Rodgers is just one of those quarterbacks. I feel very, very comfortable inside in the Dome. I think he's going to look great right from the start. And I kind of like the Packers in the game. That's a different conversation, but I feel comfortable with Rodgers in week 1.
And the Saints lost some defensive pieces too. It's going to be interesting to see what this secondary looks like this year, because remember, just a few years ago, they went from like legit the worst secondary in the league to a team that we kind of came into the season thinking they're still going to be bad, maybe a little bit improved. And they ended up being very good. They created a ton of turnovers, and you didn't want to face them by week 8. But I think they're going to look a lot different this year. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, this is Aaron Rodgers you're talking about. And the great thing is you're drafting Aaron Rodgers in like the 8th round now. This is a guy who finished 3rd at his position last season, career high in touchdown passes, over 4,500 yards for, I think, the only second time in his career. But because he doesn't have that rushing upside, you're getting him a lot later in the draft.
And I do want to just say real quick, appreciate chat. Yeah. The hurricane, obviously that moved the game. So this is a neutral site, which doesn't hurt the situation. Obviously I wish it was endured, but Jacksonville, that's going to be no problem either weather-wise. So again, Rodgers, I think, is in a prime spot to look good right from the start.
Well, think about that. I mean, I know I don't want to diverge too much, but that does a lot for the true line that it's moved to a neutral site when we constantly see a home field advantage factor.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. If anything, I mean, Rodgers, people don't like him. I love the brutal, as Ben and I was the brutal honesty, right? When it comes to Rodgers, he doesn't hold back. And he says, I remember they asked him if it was cold game, and he's like, it's not cold enough. That's not the type of honesty I'm talking about, because he rips into people. But Rodgers would rather play in cold weather. I think what's great about this is, because it's on a neutral field, the Saints, who have just performed so well inside of that dome, particularly Breeze, who isn't there, but still in that dome, you're not getting that home field advantage, which, that's absolutely massive in my opinion.
All right, so there's going to be a theme here on the show where these two minds have they'll tell you that haters will say it's edited, it's collabed ahead of time, but no, this is actually two people thinking in the same vein here with Rasa and Luffy. So the next sit-em is basically both of you guys individually coming together with the same name. And I'm sure for similar reasons, but they will space out a little bit here. Herbert is off the list. So whoever wants to start, you guys are going to share 50-50 claim here on this kid.
Go ahead, Ben. And I'll throw another one in there just for,
Yeah, I mean, so this hurts me because I'm a Justin Herbert guy. I love Oregon. I liked him. Everything looks fantastic. I think he's very prime for a good year, and I like the Chargers. But listen, when we're talking about season long, and of course the DFS side too, it's about who you're playing that week. And I respect Washington's defense even more than a little. That's putting it lightly. It's a very competitive spread, 44.5 point total. This is a spot where I really worry about what's going to happen with Herbert if he can hold up against this pressure. Chase Young is absolutely unstoppable. I really like this defense, and I just think this game could be more of a grinded out type. So volume is king. Herbert's obviously a guy willing to take chances. I just don't know if the game script is going to allow him full reign to do that. I think this could be more of a methodical game. I really do trust that Washington defense is going to be a pain point all year for opposing quarterbacks. For that simple reason, there's just better options this week if you can avoid it.
I'm with you. Look, 22, and we will talk about streaming options at quarterback later on. The good thing about quarterback is there's always a decent option that you can throw in there that's in a good spot with a pretty decent implied total. I mean, the Chargers have a sub 23 point implied total this week. Washington, has been pointed out, they had the second best, top 5 pass rush last year. According to Football Outsiders, they were second in pass defense DVOA. It's just a really good defense on all fronts. I expect this to be a low scoring game. And another thing, take it for what it's worth. Maybe it means nothing. It is only week 1, but you hear about the West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast. This is the Chargers coming from LA out to Washington. They have a lot of weapons on this team. So I'm not saying you can't move the football, but it's just a really ugly spot for Justin Herbert. And I think it's probably a decent one to stay away from. I'm just not big on it at all. As far as another one goes that you're looking to sit this week, there's nobody that's towards the top that really stands out because all of these other guys have at least neutral matchups. But I would throw Ben Roethlisberger in there. He's not someone I want to stream. He's not someone I want to start. This is a pretty tough matchup for him. And going 1 year further into, this old age, I understand that Roethlisberger could be decent at times this season, and a lot of those pass catches and weapons on this team are being drafted pretty early. But I want nothing to do with him sitting Roethlisberger. If it's a two quarterback league, you might just have to bite the bullet. But no way I want to stream someone like Rodgers this week as a replacement.
Yeah, I have no argument there at all. I'm curious, somebody in that realm of where we have at least rankings on the site for start sit. I'm curious where Teddy Bridgewater is, because I think when you look at the matchup there, especially with the ability to turn the ball over, like that offensive line with New York is an absolute travesty. It's going to be a problem for him to keep the ball, maybe just off short field. We know that he's got weapons now, at least better weapons, more consistent than we've seen in Carolina, minus McCaffrey, of course. If you're looking in that realm of back end guys and you're shooting down Ben Roethlisberger, then someone like Teddy Bridgewater, I think, becomes a little more appealing.
There's just not a ton of upside with Bridgewater for me, and that's the problem. Like I would have gone with Drew Lock ahead of him just because, for fantasy purposes, because Drew Lock might not be great, but is at least going to air the ball out a ton. I think Bridgewater helps the running backs a lot more, and I do think he's going to target the running backs. But just overall, from, what should we be expecting from somebody like Teddy Bridgewater? I don't expect a very high ADOT. You don't expect him to be throwing downfield. More of these kind of methodical drives, and that doesn't really get it done, especially when I think we're going to have some other pretty decent options out there.
Yeah, I think he makes the Broncos more likely to win the game. And I don't know if that's the best thing from the fantasy perspective, to be honest, because they can lean on defense. They can lean on those weapons. Drew Lock could single-handedly lose the game, but he could also have 60 attempts in the game because he threw 3 pick sixes. Bridgewater's not going to do that.
Single-handedly lose the game, but also give you 28 fantasy points. Yeah,
the Jameis. That's the Jameis.
Yeah, the Winston.
Well,
yeah,
the poor man's Jameis. Yeah. All right, let's move to running back here. All right, Rasa, our guy who's on the picture here, the poster child for the program, Dalvin Cook is your go-to.
Yeah, I mean, this is not, obviously, you're starting Dalvin Cook no matter what. That's not anything breaking news. I just wanted to point out how good of a matchup this is. Everyone's talking about this game. It's going to have a lot of lucrative situations, particularly on the Bengals side, people going there. Cincinnati was awful last year, 31st in the league, over 5 yards allowed per rushing attempt. So if you have Dalvin Cook and you're kind of tossing, what I was thinking with this one is obviously you're anchoring with him, but I think you're so confident in the floor and the output there. I don't mind if you're airing, with other, and we're going to talk about this on Friday, 1v1s. I think you'd be a little more aggressive in some other spots with your team if you're looking for upside, or if you think you have a good situation, you could be even more conservative, because Dalvin Cook, I think, could be one of the highest scoring players on the week with this matchup. So it's not just obviously that I want to start him. I think he's the anchor of your team. You feel very, very confident if you have him this week. This is one of the best matchups he'll see all season.
Yeah, I mean, he could win weeks for people hands down.
I think this is one of those potential, just right off the bat, blow up weeks.
You're obviously playing him. It's Dalvin Cook, right? Like, easily, obviously your second overall pick, but I can appreciate what you're saying, Ben. Just that, like, if you're going into it with Dalvin Cook, you should feel phenomenal about his week 1 matchup, and you might end up getting 200 total yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. And I think possibilities of that can change little things with the rest of your team in terms of who you're playing. If you feel very confident in that projection that he has a blow up spot, you may, in a 50-50 coin toss situation, err on the side of caution, or say that you're more willing to roll the dice because you know that Dalvin Cook, he might bail you out if one of your, high upside guys whiffs on week 1.
All right. So maybe not as obvious, Luffy, your stardom for week 1 at the running back spot.
This is a guy that I've been beating the drum for all off season. And I love him in week 1. And it's great because this is someone who's dealt with injuries. You don't know how long into the season he's going to make it. You also don't know how long it's going to be until Trey Sermon potentially takes over, but it's not going to be week 1. Raheem Mostert, can you pick a better week 1 matchup for a guy like Mostert? I mean, you're drafting this guy 8th or 9th round, generally behind Trey Sermon in every single league. And people forget the problem with Raheem Mostert is not that he isn't good. No, Raheem Mostert's actually very good. He's also absurdly fast. He had the 2 fastest runs of the season last year, and he only played like 7 games. The 2 fastest runs of the season, like 23 and 22.5 miles per hour, both of them 70+ yard touchdowns. Both of those were Raheem Mostert. And I say that because he's not just a guy that, in between the tackles, north-south runner. This guy can do everything. He averages 5.6 yards per carry for his career. And now you go in to face a Detroit Lions team that's just straight trash. I mean, you think about this. The Lions offense is not going to be able to generate points. And Ben and I will talk about a sit in just a moment. They're not going to be able to generate points. There might be some garbage time points there for some of the pass catchers, sure, but they're not going to be able to generate points consistently. The Niners weren't healthy last year, but the year before that, when they made the Super Bowl, only the Ravens ran the ball more than the San Francisco 49ers, and they still had a backfield by committee. So Raheem Mostert is the starter here. Even if Sermon gets worked in a lot, and I assume he will, you could see an easy 15, 17 touches for Mostert as 7.5-point favorites with an implied total that's close to 30, or 27. Just everything I love about this. Just red zone or touchdown equity for Raheem Mostert, big playability, and then you don't have to throttle them by throwing the football. Just you can run the ball as much as you'd like. Go with what you're looking to do. If you have Kittle, if you have Brandon Ayuk, if you have Deebo Samuel, listen, you're still playing them as well. But I think the rushing volume here is going to be massive for Week 1 as touchdown plus favorites.
I mean, I don't think it's even a hot take to say that the Niners could rush the ball 35 or 40 times in this game. And if that happens, Sermon, Mostert, these guys are going to be able to coexist. And you mentioned he's probably got more, range of outcomes just because of breakaway speed. If you don't get the volume, well, you can always get bailed out if he just breaks an 80-yard touchdown or something. That's always in the back pocket, but you couldn't ask for a better situation. The ideal game script for the Niners is just dominate teams with defense and run the ball down their throat. The ideal matchup for that scenario is the Lions. So you have just the perfect contrasting styles right here. I expect the Niners to be a very, very popular play across all formats, from DFS to season long to best ball.
Yep. Love it.
The identity doesn't change. That's the beauty of it. And look, they could be up by 28, 35 points in this game and not pull their foot off the pedal by any means. We could still see them running and keeping ones in and definitely maximize that rushing attack. Let me throw one name before we hit on another parallel here for both of you guys on Swift, as you hinted at, Luffy, in Detroit. Mike Davis on the matchup, specifically with the matchup this week. And again, I think that if looking specifically at what we've seen with this Eagles rush defense deteriorate a little bit, there's so much of this belief, right, that, Atlanta throws, which they are. Again, I'm not saying you wouldn't look at any of the pass catching, including Matt Ryan throwing the ball, as an option here. But I think a lot of that has come with them being so bad, playing other teams that are just better than them. In this case, I think the Falcons are going to be up. Like, I like the Falcons to even win this game outright. And I think that puts a guy like Davis in a different light than we've seen the running back position, at least the last year and a half. So in that range of where he's expected, I wonder if that's at least a little bit of more of an appeal, knowing that you could take advantage of a matchup this week as opposed to just locking him in and expecting something more from a season standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about the matchup, but they did take a step back. And if you drafted Mike Davis in probably the 5th round, yeah, you're gonna start him this week, unless you went RB heavy, and he's your flex, but you have better options. We'll talk about some of them. I'm going to be releasing a video too, like an on-demand video tomorrow morning for more start sit-em action, if you guys want to check that out. And hey, subscribe to this channel. If you're new to this channel, Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, we just started putting content out here like early or middle of June. Mainly we were always a DFS channel over at the main Awesemo channel. And we're going to have an insane amount of DFS content for football all year long, every single day of the week. So join us there too. But if you're new here, hit that subscribe and hit its thumbs up as well, notifications, whatever it is. It all helps us out immensely. And we appreciate you guys hanging here. But yeah, I like Mike Davis. Do I love him? No, but I never love Mike Davis. Mike Davis is the type of guy you draft because he's pretty safe. He's one of the cheapest third down backs that you're getting in the draft. You're not paying a premium for him, and you just hope that he's out there for all 3 downs.
Yeah, fair enough.
And the thing I like about Mike Davis, if the game goes sideways, it doesn't really hurt him because he can catch the ball. So like some of these guys, you're like, well, if he gets phased out and it goes wrong, he's non-existent. That's not the case. Like, he will be relevant in Atlanta's offense no matter what. It's not the ideal situation, but he's someone we identified, using the tools all the packages that we have for the fantasy football, he was a name that kept popping up as an undervalued target. And I think people who jumped on that are going to reap the benefits.
All right, let's look at another name to avoid. Collective decision here between the two of you. We go back to Detroit again for the wrong reasons. Who wants a shot at Swift first? Lofty, you take it since Rasa hit the other one. Herbert.
Yeah,
first.
sure. I already talked about it pretty extensively. I don't think there's much touchdown equity at all in this game for Detroit. I'm not saying they can't get some garbage time run. That would be nice. But I just think they're going to have a very difficult time running the football. And I also think that if this game script plays out the way Vegas has it and the way I've had it, Ben, I bet this game like
early, yeah,
the day it came out. I think it was 6.5. It's at 7.5 now, but 7.5 I still like. I mean, it's not a number you love. It's 7.5, but you get the point. Like it's just a really bad spot for Swift. And while we've seen kind of conflicting reports on him and in the preseason, what you're going to get. And if you drafted him, you're taking him in the 3rd round. So a lot of draft equity went into this. I get it. But it is a very tough spot for DeAndre Swift. There's no question about that. If they have to abandon the run, your only hope is that he is the clear predominant or primary 3-down back and bails himself out on pass catching. And Jared Goff is the type of guy that is going to dink and dunk downfield. So I don't think that DeAndre Swift is if you have DeAndre Swift as your RB2 and you're like, I don't have anybody else, I absolutely get why you would play him. You're really just hoping that DeAndre Swift in PPR formats, if it's standard leagues, I feel very uncomfortable with DeAndre Swift. But in PPR leagues, I do think there is that silver lining, that saving grace that, hey, you know what? Maybe DeAndre Swift does enough in the passing game, late in the game, assuming they're trailing. And I'd be shocked if they weren't to bail you out. But that's a big if, Ben.
Huge if. And then there's the other if that we don't know if it really gets out of hand, not in like, oh, it's 40-0, but say they're down 17 points. If he's still working back and clearly he doesn't seem 100%, do they say, let's not put excess usage on him right here. Let's get him out of the, this game is somewhat decided. Let's go to these other backs. I don't think it's a given that Swift is just going to get the lion's share, even if they want him to. I think that's a matter of where he's at. And we've seen reports on that. So as I always say, you're trying to get multiple things right. Like he needs to get the volume in a perfect world. Then he's got to be effective. I don't think he's going to be effective regardless, but I also think there's a chance that we don't see him take the lion's share to start. And that's something long-term. I think Swift is in a pretty good spot, but right now in week 1, this is a red flag for me.
Yeah. The matchup alone. I mean, we just talked about it as far as the benefits of the Niners. It's such a suffocating matchup there that to bank on those multiple legs of a parlay hitting on a bad team with bad surroundings around them, it's definitely enough to stay away. All right. 2 wide receivers.
I got one more, Eytan, real quick, since we both went on Swift. Josh Jacobs is in a brutal spot this week. And while I think he became good value late in the year before drafting because his ADP just slipped dramatically, you've got him going up against the Baltimore Ravens this week. They just signed Kenyon Drake to a deal that they were really chastised for when it happened. And it does appear that he is going to be the clear 3rd down back. I think Vegas Raiders offense is actually pretty good. And Derek Carr probably doesn't get enough credit. Hell, in beginning of last year, I wasn't giving him enough credit, and he made me a believer from a fantasy standpoint. But this feels like one of those spots where you can't be confident going into this with Josh Jacobs, especially now that Kenyon Drake is on the roster. I know Devontae Booker's gone, but still, there are a lot of things, as Ben would say, that need to go right in a spot like this. And if you're only, 1st and 2nd down back and you're facing the Baltimore defense and Kenyon Drake's role is still undefined, but he could likely carve out a pretty significant one, there's a lot of things that could go wrong as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with that. They play. I mean, what's there to say? You summed it up nicely, Lafe. They
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, Josh Jacobs was the guy that we've talked about in these shows that I wasn't overly high on. In Baltimore, they're so methodical. Those drives, they can really suck up time, and that is a double-edged sword because if they're effective, then the Raiders have to start passing the ball. That's not good. And even if not, 6, 7, 8 minute drives, there's just not that much game left.
Great point. Baltimore played at the 2nd slowest pace last year, 29.57 seconds per play, behind only the Green Bay, or ahead of only the Packers. So yeah, when they have the ball and they're driving downfield against the lackluster Vegas defense, it's even worse in terms of how you're going to get Jacobs the ball on the other side.
Yeah. And they're good. That's the killer about them. It's not that they just possess the ball. They're really good. So they score, and then you're down. And a lot of time has been taken off the clock. So it's really difficult when you see Baltimore.
All right, let's look at wide receivers. Rasa, start them. Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to make light, obviously, I hope he stays healthy, but early in the season, I do think that Brandon Cooks is a guy that, if he can stay on the field, he's going to be poised to do some damage for a team that, even against the Jaguars, is it really inconceivable that they will be trailing? I mean, they are underdogs once again. They're going to be underdogs probably in every game. This is as close to their potentially wins that they could find. And Cooks is a guy, I still believe that when he's healthy, he can be very, very effective. I know this team is a dumpster fire, but they're going to have to throw. And somebody's going to have to get some of these targets, particularly downfield. And I think it's just a simple product of, this is one of the few games they should be competitive in. Jacksonville is not a world beater. Yeah, I worry a little about, some things here and there with them, but 44.5, they're going to get some of that implied total. I think Cooks is a guy that you can roll out on a horrible team, particularly early in the season.
I've had a lot of comments on my videos from this channel this year saying, Brandon Cooks is shit and all of this stuff, and there's no reason you should touch him. Well, the thing is, like, even bad teams with not great quarterbacking can produce a solid player. Brandon Cooks has been a perennial 1,000-yard receiver outside of that 1 year with the Rams where just everything went to hell. And last year when Will Fuller was out for the remaining 5 weeks, Cooks only played 2 of them, but he was the wide receiver 5 over that span. Yeah, Deshaun Watson was the quarterback, but you didn't draft Brandon Cooks as your wide receiver 5. You didn't draft him as your wide receiver 10. You didn't draft him as your wide receiver 30, right? You drafted Brandon Cooks outside of the top 30 at his position. You're just hoping that he soaks up enough targets. And why would he not? Randall Cobb is gone. There's not much there. That Kike Kute, like who are we talking about here that actually concerns us? And another thing, everyone talks about, well, this is crazy. Jacksonville's favored. Well, it's crazy to me that in any week that the Houston Texans are only dogs by a point or two. So Jacksonville Jaguars had the second worst pass defense last year, according to PFF. That's not very good. You look at their pass defense DVOA, 31st, only ahead of the Detroit Lions on Football Outsiders. Sure, you make adjustments over the offseason, but this is still going to be a pretty rough secondary in Jacksonville. And I will say this much. If you look at Tyrod Taylor, okay, nobody actually likes Tyrod Taylor, but is he that bad?
No, not especially from what we've been able to see him throw the football down the field, take advantage of the fact that they're probably going to be down. Look, they're 3-point home dogs against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So the expectation is that Taylor's going to have a lot of looks and they're not going to keep it tight. Like to your point about Bridgewater, this is not going to be Tyrod Taylor checking the football down 15 times in a drive just to play it close to the vest so you can keep Jacksonville off the field. Like they're going to take chances, mainly because out of circumstance.
They're not playing to get into the playoffs.
No, and if you're Taylor, you may be playing for another job next year or in 6 weeks, depending on how this thing plays out. Yep. So you want to take some shots downfield as well.
Ben mentioned something, and I'm with you. Ben mentioned something a couple of weeks ago when the three of us were doing the show that the one concern is Tyrod Taylor takes away some of the upside with his legs. But was that mostly a concern for you just with guys like Phillip Lindsay and less of a concern for the pass catchers?
Yeah, definitely. And I do think he's kind of like I almost wish they had like a Drew Lock where they would just be horrible. Like I kind of equate Tyrod Taylor to a Bridgewater, a very stable presence. He's not like Fitzpatrick or one of these true gunslingers, but they're just so behind personnel wise. It's hard to imagine that they're not going to be trailing. And the other thing is like this, the NFL, it's not like, again, I know I equate a lot of things to college football, but in college football, when you get an awful team, they don't, they score 3 points a game. Like these teams, even though Houston's going to be awful, it's not like they're not going to rack up some yards passing. Like it'll be inefficient. It'll be ugly. It'll utterly be meaningless, but it won't be meaningless to Cooks. Like if you're a Cook, it's not like they say, oh, those yards came in garbage time. Those don't matter. Like his stats count just as much as everyone else, even if it's not going to equate to wins for the Texans.
All right, let's look at both of you guys on the Claypool train to sit. And I wonder how much of this has to do with individual matchup? Because if that's the case, does that then open up anything for Deontay Johnson? So let's start with why everybody on the show is sitting Chase Claypool first and foremost.
Yeah, sure. Tre'Davious White is really, really, really good. And I'm not necessarily even going to say that you're getting shadow coverage here, but Claypool saw a lot of him last time they played. Deontay Johnson saw less, and I just think it's a brutal matchup. I'm a big fan for the future, or for Chase Claypool's future, I should say. I really am. Like I think Chase Claypool is going to be very, very good. There's no doubt about that. But man, Tre'Davious White is fantastic. And it's not like Levi Wallace is terrible either. I just think this is a good pass defense, one that is going to make life very difficult for Ben Roethlisberger. I also anticipate the pass volume being lower this season. You don't draft Najee Harris in the first round to not use him. And if you are using him, you might, if you're trailing, you might see more dump offs and more passes out to the running back as well. So I think just in general, it's a good pass defense. It's a good secondary. Tre'Davious White is horrifying, and Najee Harris kind of the final nail in the coffin here that they might try to run more, because you can't have Roethlisberger throwing over 40 times per game. You just can't do it this year and be successful.
I should have went first. Those are all the points that I wanted to make.
You went first on Swift, and I have nothing left. So.
Yeah, I know, but this one, I thought there, and I know you said this before the show to me too. I thought there was no chance that you would be in the fade Claypool camp.
I said the same thing to you. Yeah,
I know.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's for the points that you echoed. I think this team's priority early in the year is going to be more balanced. They don't want Big Ben. And yes, he gets the ball out very quickly, so he doesn't take a ton of punishment back there. But regardless, they don't want him dropping back 50 times. They want Najee to be involved. They have other receivers. Tre'Davious White is one of the few corners that I actually think really can impact an individual's matchup. He's absolutely fantastic. The other thing, I just think Claypool on a macro level is due for some regression, particularly with touchdowns. He's a damn good player. I think he can have a very effective year. He did run pretty hot last year, though, with a lot of those. So it's a combination of all these things. It's a tough spot going into Buffalo. I don't love him in this week 1 matchup, not long-term, but just here, very, very tough spot.
And let me draw a quick comparison to Brandon Cooks too. Brandon Cooks, you could make an argument. Yeah, well, they're just going to the defense is just going to focus on him. Okay. But if you're Tyrod Taylor, where else do you go? Right. Like, you're going to take those chances. If you're Ben Roethlisberger and Chase Claypool is matched up against arguably the toughest corner in the league, or at least top 3, you can go to Deontay Johnson. You can go to Juju Smith-Schuster in the slot. You can go to Najee Harris. You can go to Eric Ebron. There's so many different ways that you can move the ball downfield in Pittsburgh. It's very easy to just be like, you know what, Chase, this isn't your week.
No doubt about it. I mean, it's a situation. If Jalen Ramsey was still on Jacksonville, I wouldn't be saying go to Cooks. It's a product of the personnel that the Jaguars have versus the personnel that the Bills have, and the personnel of the Steelers versus the Texans. You mentioned it. Sometimes target share, there's nowhere else for the ball to go. And Pittsburgh's got a multitude of options on that offense. They may say, you know what? We'll sacrifice Claypool and Tre'Davious White. That's a cancel we're willing to live with. We'll operate with our other 2 receivers, tight end and Najee, and we feel pretty comfortable.
Which isn't necessarily a given either, though. I mean, we talked about Roethlisberger as a sit, knowing how difficult it could be just in general to move that ball against Buffalo and that defense. So I wonder if, while Claypool represents the concern, there's more of that trickle-down effect across the board. Like, the safest play on this team is Harris, because no matter what the circumstances will be, you're going to get an opportunity to feed him the rock, even if it's quick dump-offs in a passing game when you're down, or setting a run that we know they're way more committed to just with his existence on the squad.
And the Bills' run defense was not very good last year. Pittsburgh has a good defense themselves. But it's all about run blocking. It's all any blocking for this Pittsburgh team. Like it doesn't even matter how bad the opponent is in terms of run defense, the defensive line, linebacker, whatever. It doesn't matter if your offensive line is that bad. So hopefully getting a little bit healthier, making some minor improvements should be enough at least to make Najee Harris, give the guy half a yard before contact. I mean, these guys, James Conner was swallowed up in the backfield every time he touched the ball last year. So was Benny Snell or whoever else had it.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm just gonna throw in, because I have to. I can't resist. I know this fantasy football, we're talking that. I'm the Awesemo odds guy. Were you surprised that this is near a touchdown, sitting at 6.5?
Yes,
No.
I was. I actually already hit the Steelers.
I thought it was heavy. I'm a Bills guy. I think they're gonna be very good. That seemed. I was thinking 4.5 range. This hovering around near a touchdown was a little surprising. That's a lot of love for Buffalo and not a lot of love for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it sounds like from what I'm saying that I hate the Steelers, but if I were to talk about their defense, you'd see how much I think their defense can hold the pieces together, and the offense just needs to be good enough. And I do think there are enough weapons. Yes, 6.5 is, just don't lose by a touchdown. I think this will be a very close game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers steal this one in week 1, but yeah, look, I still think I'm not betting them outright. I'm not saying that, but I do think it's going to be a very competitive. You don't think this will be a close game?
No, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a Steelers guy. I don't think that they're going to be particularly effective, but I was just surprised at the spread. That's all. I thought.
Wait, did you think it would be more in favor of Buffalo?
No, I thought Buffalo would be like 4.5 point favorite.
Me too.
Yeah, but that's where the recency bias came from last year. I mean, this Bills team is looked at as what, the 3rd or 4th odds to win it. So I think that there's going to be a heavy lay on Buffalo at home. I was happy to take them at 6. I even got in, and I bumped this a little bit, but I got in over 20.5 points for the Steelers. At 48.5, I can get 21 to 24 points from Pittsburgh, especially if we're talking about a close game. I don't think this is a blowout by any means, but I think that total hits. It's just back to Pittsburgh moving the ball and putting points up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know yet. I think it'll be close. That's where I'm willing to sit at right now. I think it'll be close.
Yeah, for the record, I have not bet this game. I just at first glance was a little surprised. So just one little tidbit. All that conversation, of course, the Awesemo Odds channel. We are going to be breaking down all these games, picks, everything in between.
Right here on the YouTubes.
Yes.
Let's look at tight end spot here. And this was a little interesting when I saw who you're rolling with, Lofty, only because we've talked about the tight end 2. Technically, we have to call Zach Ertz that, but you're rolling full steam ahead with Dallas Goedert.
I'm not sure there's going to be a better tight end matchup this year than the Atlanta Falcons. That's why. And am I a little bit concerned that Zach Ertz, has mended fences with the front office in Philadelphia? Sure, it's not great for us, but at the same time, Jalen Hurts, when he was starting last year, targeted his tight ends almost 30% of the time. I still think there's going to be enough to go around here. And think about this. Look at this Falcons team, okay? This secondary is not going to be good. And of course, we're talking tight ends, not wide receivers, but in the same breath, this is a team that allowed more passing yards than any other team in the league last year. Tight ends did quite well against them. But another thing to consider is that their pass rush is going to stink. If you don't have a pass rush and you give a guy, even Jalen Hurts, who hasn't been the most accurate player, time in the pocket to throw the football, and then you've got a big body guy like Dallas Goedert, who's also very, very athletic, I just don't see how this isn't a really, really good spot for Goddard. I mean, I love him this week. And I was thinking, I can't wait to see what ownership looks like for DFS on DraftKings, because if Dallas Goedert's coming in with low ownership, I'm going to be all over that as well.
What I know it's to a lesser extent, but maybe it's more of a DFS question. Do you feel the same way that it's an opportunity for Ertz?
Why not? Especially if Goddard ends up being very high owned, and people are going with the same analysis, right?
Well, he's also going to be targeted more. Now, again, your point is that they can't guard shit at that position. And you're right. But that still doesn't mean that more of their efforts, even though they're shitty, are going to be placed on Goddard. I think Ertz, especially, like, the better the matchup is for Goddard, I think also for Ertz to be sneaky and take advantage of it, because it's going to be a position matchup. Now, if there's a tough matchup for Goddard, I still think that works for Ertz. But in this case, it may be counter to just logic. But I think Goddard having the ability to get open and Goddard having that matchup is the same for Ertz, especially because he'd be significantly less owned in DFS, but also as a workable play here as a back tight end in deeper drafts. Did we lose Lofty?
Your Eagles analysis, he had the jet. He's gone. Look at that.
He just lost power. Uh-oh.
That's a
Now
damn
I'm
shame.
concerned
Well, this is
here.
good. Now I can dominate the conversation on TJ Hawkinson, which is what I wanted to do to begin with. I love
Go
the
ahead,
spot with
brother.
him.
It's all you.
It's all me, baby. TJ Hawkinson. Yes. Am I a little worried? But it seems like he's healthy. We're going to have to monitor that. That's just something you have to deal with. Everything we talked about with Swift is a situation that we've talked about. It could be garbage time. It could get out of hand. The running backs could suffer. Well, who's going to benefit? The tight end to me? I mean, Jared Goff is a guy, he could be under constant pressure. Hawkinson is the type of target. I wouldn't be stunned to see him really get a large share of that, especially if he's not a lot of time to go downfield. That could be the safety blanket. And Eytan, is it really inconceivable that the Lions are playing catch up? There's a lot of garbage time, and Hawkinson is one of the main beneficiaries of a situation like that.
Yep. Especially when that Lions offense does move the ball over midfield. We expect that to happen once or twice a game, right? And you get closer into the red zone, things get tighter. Like Hawkinson, and look, I see it on the chat. Hawkinson is so overhyped by Esteban Zamora. Love it. I love the fact that he's overhyped. I love the fact that people won't own him. I love the fact that people stray away from him because he's on a shitty team with an even worse quarterback. Even more opportunity for you and I and others here to jump in and take advantage of the benefit, which is, and again, this is such a rarity, but to Brandon Cook's standpoint as well, matchups withstanding, but it's hard to find that. You find guys on bad teams that are bulletproof. You can always counter ownership on a DFS standpoint. You could always take advantage of being maybe top heavy in the tight end spot where it's just Hawkinson, or having that maneuverability if you have like a Kelsey as well that you drafted high and Hawkinson later on. Like, he's a guy that's bulletproof to no matter the circumstance. He doesn't come off the field from a target and expectation standpoint. They're not pulling him for 2 or 3 series unless he's hurt. And that's what I love here, because you're right. At some point, Goff's going to figure it out. At some point, they're going to move the football over midfield. At some point, they'll be in the red zone, and he's their best really across the board.
Yeah. Listen, it might be not pretty at times. It might be inefficient at times. And I'm not even going to push back. I think the hype train is a little out of control with him, but there's still ample opportunities in this offense. In a tough matchup, there's no doubt. You don't want to see the Niners across the field, but I think he's good to go. And, one of the things we were talking about with this type of show, obviously, it all depends on who you have available. Like some of the guys we've talked about, like Chase Claypool, he's a damn good player. If you have nobody else or you don't have anyone comparable, well, you have to start him. It's not saying don't play him under any circumstances. I think what we're saying, though, is it's not the ideal situation. And some of these guys we think could struggle, potentially in the starting week where they'll have better matchups in the future.
All right, one more time, of course, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. We see new people popping in throughout the program. We want to remind you, not just the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, where we provide season-long insight, entertainment, hopefully a good balance of both, but across the board, the Awesemo DFS channel, the main channel, and the Awesemo Odds channel, where you'll get a lot more of the betting conversation that can't help itself from sprinkling in here. Lofty lost power. Don't worry. Everything's fine. Just waiting for it to get on. But we do move on. I mean, we're winding down as is. So let's move and make sure that we hit the tight end spot, which we did cover here. It looks like the sit. I mean, he has Gesicki. I don't know. Honestly, I would put Goddard, but we just covered Goddard, and I don't want to sound like, I'm driving back over a dead body when Lofty's not here to defend himself. But again, there is this major concern that I have that Zach Ertz is this sleeping dog who is going to explode, and they've already proven that they like to run the 12 personnel. And we also have this variance out there that I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how much the ball is going to go to Devontae Smith. I don't know how much the ball is going to go to Jalen Reagor. Honestly, I have no fucking idea. This team could be moving the ball all over the place, Ben. They could be moving it to a standpoint of just working Goddard for a 15-catch, 180 performance. Like, I could see one or two extremes and then so many places in the middle. So there was my main concern with Goddard, just from a Zach Ertz standpoint, not from a he can't dominate standpoint. Does that make more sense?
No, I get that. I think he is a pretty polarizing guy. And then you look at, someone like Mike Gesicki, who we kind of talked about and Lofty was shorting, and I'm with him there. It's, I think, a product, just very tough matchup. The Patriots, they've chosen their quarterback, but I think no matter what, their game plan was going to be, lean on a very strong defense. They were one of the teams, they had a lot of opt-outs last year. That's more of a college thing, but they're getting some key guys back. Gesicki, good tight end. But again, Miami, I think there's also just a lot of questions about, honestly, their quarterback at this point. Fitz was someone that, love him or hate him, you knew he was going to give guys opportunities, maybe when he even shouldn't, but he was. Tua, I don't know. I don't know if it's the hip, or maybe they just missed on him, or maybe he's going to take a step and he's going to be very, very good. I think that remains to be seen. But again, in week 1, you've got ample opportunities. There's a lot of risk there against a good defense and unknown offense on the road. So I get why Gesicki would be one of those guys in a game with just a 43.5 total, where if you have another option at tight end, I don't think it's the craziest. And that kind of leads us, Eytan, to where we're going to close this out, which is some streamers, some guys maybe you pick up for the week and hope to ride them hot and get things started on the right foot.
So let's throw Lofty's out here, because I love the quarterback. And again, he can't be here to fill in the blanks. So we'll speak for him, assuming that the power's not going to come back in the next couple of minutes. But Baker Mayfield, and a lot of this is just matchup week to week. I know jump out with the Chiefs, but the reality, though, is we already know the identity of this football team. We know that this is going to be run heavy. We know that Baker Mayfield with Stefanski's offense is not going to be asked, even with circumstances that may lead it to throwing the football 50, 55 times. I think for a guy who has the ability to throw the ball downfield and is going to be asked to pick spots, it's a pretty good matchup that you can control week to week if you're looking to stream a quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys in Baker's one. We saw that kind of in that final game. I do think this game is expected, like most, to really get moving. The Chiefs are just such a high octane offense, 53-point total, 6-point favorite at home. The other guy, though, we're going to talk about, and you say, how could you go to this guy? But listen, this is why they're streamers. This is why they're available. Sam Darnold at home, getting a little revenge narrative against the Jets. And listen, it's the Jets. I think that they're trending in the right direction. I'm a fan of Saleh. I don't think immediately we're going to see those dividends paid. And the Panthers, they still have ample weapons. Obviously, McCaffrey takes the pressure off. He's the type of guy, I don't think it's crazy when you're in a jam for a week that you could go to at times in an offense that was just absolutely non-existent. I don't think it was really on him. That was not the catalyst of the problems for the Jets. So he gets a new environment in Carolina, more weapons, more stability, their favorite. I don't think it's a smash spot, but again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about streamers. I think you could do a lot worse than Sam Darnold if you're in a pinch.
Couple of big play wide receivers that he can throw to down the field. We know that McCaffrey opens up so much on the ground, catching the football as well. Let me throw a nice little plug for our guy here in Philly, Matt Rule, who's down there with another year under his belt to kind of open this offense up. I agree with you. I love the idea of the matchup as well as what's around him. And look, this is part of it, is taking advantage of that big boom bust, if you will, potential, knowing that they can get the ball down the field, but it's not something you would rely on game to game, let alone half to half. All right, defense. Let's end here on who you're streaming defensively.
A couple of things. I'm going to get to that. What we're going to do is see a lot of things in chat about 1v1s. This Friday, you guys better bring those questions, because that's going to be the whole show. Just us three, rapid fire, answering your questions. If you got quarterbacks, receivers, do you want to know this guy or this guy, 2v2s, bring them to the show on Friday. We have you covered. Everything in between. We want all the questions. But defense, I think it's just a product of looking to some of these garbage matchups. The Jaguars, I know that feels gross, but again, it's not that they're a good defense. It's that Houston might be that bad. And yes, we talked about Brandon Cooks, but we talked about him in the confines of the game is awful and they're forced to throw. And that doesn't mean there won't be mistakes, turnovers, just pure ineptness by this offense. I don't think Tyrod Taylor is the worst quarterback in the league, but I think Houston has the worst collection of skill set players around him. So Jacksonville is not that bad of a defense. They can force turnovers, and certainly they're going to be available for you. So that's one. Defense is fluky. We talk about that in DFS all the time. Inherently high variance. Yeah, I'd want Washington or the Niners, but that's a perfect world. If not, punt it with Jacksonville. I don't think that's crazy at all.
What about Denver? And I know that they're probably look. I think Danny Jones is up for probably the worst year of his career. Like, there's way too much pressure on this dude. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to be able to take a shot at Dak Prescott, so I had to take a shot at somebody else in that division. Watch, Jalen Hurts will look like he'll throw up all over himself. The karma is out there. Unbelievable. No, but just something to think about. What, like, just playing matchups are probably not going to be fully available as kind of like that mid-tier D, but just thinking of, depending on your league, we see so many screenshots of people in leagues where you just can't believe they left teams or people open like that. So just think about it from that standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, that's something, just to transition a little bit, like in Survivor, I think a lot of people's strategy all year is just going to take the Jaguars early if you want to be aggressive and go against Houston, short them the whole year. And I think for a streaming defense, if whoever Houston's playing, if that defense is available, they're always going to be an interesting pickup that week just because of how bad this team is.
All right. Final reminder on your way out here to hit away, smash that thumbs up. Make sure you are liking what we're doing here across the board and subscribed as well to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, the Awesemo DFS channel, the Awesemo Odds channel. As Ben mentioned, we'll be back, the three of us, Jordan included, we'll be back, all four of us, on Friday for a jam-packed interactive program where once again, we're going to need your help. So stash them up, get them ready, and then we'll hit you up on Twitter day of, so you know, at Lofty_D when he's here, at JazzRaz DFS, at Shander Show for me. Thank you to everybody one more time to hit that Awesemo promo code at Underdog. And still, with best ball drafts available right up to the start of the season, you want to make sure you use our promo code Awesemo for a $25 match. For Rasa, for Lofty, I'm Eytan. We'll see you Friday.
Mm-hmm.